Hello everyone and welcome to this new tutorial. So this is the beginning of a series on how to handle CSV files using Python. So on this first tutorial you will see how we can read CSV file. Basically, what are the different main ways to read data from a CSV file using Python. Let's first check our CSV file, and as you can see, the name is clients.csv and this is the data of our file. So the first row, as always, is the header, and after that comes our data. The main thing to notice here is that the data is separated using a comma, and hence the name comma separated values or CSV. This is important because sometimes the data is not separated using a comma, but mainly the data will be separated using a comma. Let's get to our Python file, and as I said, there are 4 different ways to read a CSV file. The first one is to use the readlines method, and this method is used to basically read any file in Python, and when reading a CSV you will require some cleaning. The second and third method will use the CSV package. The first one is CSV DictReader and second one is CSV DictReader. These two methods are CSV specific and they are in a lot of cases the most used ones, and each one of them will output data differently. The fourth and the last method is through using the Pandas package, and Pandas is very famous in the worlds of data science and data analysis. So let's get started. And let's start with the read lines method. So I will come here and I will try to read this CSV as any other file. And for that I will use with open the name of the file, which is clients.csv. In here you may see some people specifying the mode, which in our case is R because we are reading, but you won't do that because the default one is reading basically. We will give it a name as, we will call it CSV file, and then in here we will set our data equal to CSV file dot read lines, and this will return a list where each line is an element of that list. So let's print that out first to see what we have. I will save this and I will run our code, and as you can see we have this long list and each element of the list is a row. As you can see, for example, the first row is the header and second row starts with 100. So let's go here and see that second row starts with 100. Now, as you may be thinking, this data needs a bit of work because we can't just use it. First of all, we have this \n at the end of each row that we need to remove. And also, we don't really want each element to be like an entire row. That way we can't use our file. Basically, we want each element to be a list. So how can we do that? Let me go back to my file, and before printing it, let's first remove this \n. And for that, I will use a list comprehension. I will set data equal to a new list. In here, I will say row.strip for row in data. I will save this. I will clean this. Oh, I made a mistake. Strip. If I run this, we can see that we don't have the \n. After that, what we can do is to call the separate method on each element to remove this. I will also call it data so that we don't have any extra variables basically. And in here, I would say row split on the commas for row in data. If I clean this and run it again, we can see that now each element is a list. And you can see that the first element is the header, the rest are the data. So if you are not familiar with list comprehensions, this is a bit of a advanced topic in Python. Basically what you are doing here is that basically instead of creating a new list and then looping over each element in here and applying the strip method and then appending it to the newly created list, we can just do that in one line. So basically what's going on here is that we are creating a new list and we are looping over each element in data, and then we are stripping over each element and appending it to that list. So this is just a one-liner. Same goes in here. Now what we need to do is to make our data more usable. You will create our header separately, which will be equal to data, and in here we will just take the first element, and also for the rest of the rows we will just call them rows, and they will take the rest of the element. So let's print the header, and also let's print our rows. I will save this, clean this. If I run again, we can see that now the header is separately from the rest of the data, and now our data can be used. So this was method number 1, and as you have seen, it required a bit of cleaning and stuff like that, because it's not meant for CSV only. The next two methods are specific to CSV, and you will notice that they will be much cleaner. So now let's go to the second method, which is CSV DictReader, and then we need to delete all of this and import a package called CSV. This package comes in with Python. So now what we can do is first read our data, and let's call it CSV, no, let's call this one reader, which is equal to CSV dot reader, and we will pass our file in here. So now we have this reader object, and it's a iterator. So let me first print it out to see what I'm talking about. If I print this directly, we won't be able to see our data, as you can see, because this is an iterator. Iterators are one of the advanced topics in Python. If you are not aware what iterators are, I would recommend to check them out, but you don't really need to understand iterators in this tutorial, because you will just need to use the same line of code each time you want to read a file. Let me write 2 lines of code and I will explain them. First, we will get our header, and to get that you will use next on our iterator, and then after that let's get the rest of the rows. We will call those rows, and we will set them equal to row for row in reader. Let me first print them so you can see what I'm doing. So if I save this and clean this, then run our file, we can see that we have the same output as we had before, the header, and this is the rest of the data. So let me explain the code. In here we read the CSV file using CSV DictReader. Then we have this reader object. So basically a reader object is an iterable in Python, and you can iterate over it to get the data, same as we have with lists and stuff like that. And whenever we call the next method, it will get us the first element in that iterator, and then it will remove that first element. And that's why we called the next in here. So basically, when we call this next method, it got us the first element, which is the header, and it did remove the header from the reader. That's important, is because now we can have the rest of the rows without caring about the header, or should I say without taking the header into consideration. Because if we just get everything, if we remove this and we just get everything at first, the header will be there, and usually we want to separate them. We did remove it from the beginning so that we don't have to remove it again next. So as you've seen, this method is way cleaner. We didn't need to remove anything or apply any Python logic to clean our data. And that's one of the advantages of directly using the CSV package. The third method is to use the DictReader. And the difference between these two is simply the output, and you should remember this one we return a list of lists, where this one we return a list of dictionaries, not a list of lists. So let's try that out. So to use the DictReader, what we can do is replace this with DictReader. We don't need to get the header separately, and we don't need this. So basically this is all the code that we need. And the reason we didn't care about the header is because now we are dealing with dictionaries, and now the header is the key of each dictionary. You will see what I'm talking about. So I will save this, I will clean this, and I will run our code. As you can see, we have one big list, and now each element of that list is a dictionary. And as you can see, The keys of the dictionaries are what we had previously as a header. As you can see, the ID, the first name, the last name, and then the values are basically the rows. So this is a different format, and depending on your needs, you may use the reader or the DictReader. So usually the most used one is the reader, but again, that depends on your use case. So this is the difference between these two. And as you can see, this one is very clean. Now let's pass to the final method, which is through using Pandas. So I will remove this. I will import Pandas and I will refer to it as PD. Then after that, I will call our data df. I will explain why. And we'll set that equal to pd.readCSV. And in here, I will pass the name of our CSV, which is in our case clients.csv. And basically, this is it. I can just print our data directly. However, I want to explain something very important in here. What Panda does is when it reads the data, it will not return a list, but it will return what's known as a Pandas data frame. And this is something that's used all the time in the world of data science and data analysis and all of that. So you may not need this. If you need a data frame, you must use Pandas, not anything else. So this is dependent of your use case. And also you need to understand that Pandas is a whole package. And if you want to do anything to that data, you gotta do it the Pandas way. You need to understand Panda very well to work with it. That's what I'm trying to say. I will make a future series on Pandas. But for now, if I save this and clean my terminal, if I run the code again, we can see that the output is very different. And this is what's known as a data frame. And also, for example, if I come here and print the type of df and write this, we can see that the type is a Pandas core frame data frame. So this is very different from a list. So these are the four main ways to read data from a CSV file. Like I mentioned before, this is the first tutorial, and on the second one, I will show you how you can write data to CSV in different ways. And from there, each tutorial will teach something about CSV. So thank you for watching and see you on the next tutorial.